I burst through the hospital doors, my heart pounding in my chest. The antiseptic smell hit me as I frantically approached the reception desk, desperate for information about my husband, Jack. They directed me to the third floor, and I practically sprinted to the elevator, willing it to move faster as it crawled upwards. I stood there, frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Jack lay unconscious in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room for what felt like an eternity. Who are you? I finally managed to stammer out. The woman stood, smoothing out her impeccable suit. I'm Carolyn Winters, Jack's lawyer, she replied, her voice crisp and professional. He asked me to be here when you arrived. I felt like I was in a nightmare, desperately wanting to wake up. I don't understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. What happened? Why is Jack here and why? Why are you giving me these? I gestured weakly at the papers in my hand. Carolyn's expression softened slightly. Jack had a minor heart attack this afternoon. He's stable now, but the doctors want to keep him for observation. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. As for the divorce papers, Jack felt it was time. He wanted to make sure you received them as soon as possible. I sank into the chair beside Jack's bed, my legs no longer able to support me. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Jack and I had been married for 15 years. We'd had our ups and downs, sure, but divorce, it seemed inconceivable. As I sat there, staring at my husband's pale face, memories flooded my mind. Our first date, a picnic in the park where we'd laughed for hours. The day he proposed, down on one knee in the middle of a crowded restaurant. Our wedding day, surrounded by friends and family, promising to love each other forever. Had it all been a lie, I looked up at Carolyn, who was watching me with a mix of sympathy and impatience. I need some time, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I can't process this right now. She nodded, reaching into her briefcase and pulling out a business card. Of course, take all the time you need to review the papers. As she turned to leave, a thought struck me. Wait, I called out, how did you know I'd be here? How did you know about Jack's heart attack before I did? Carolyn paused at the door, her expression unreadable. Jack called me this afternoon, just before he collapsed. He wanted to make sure everything was in order. With that, she left, her heels clicking down the hallway. I turned back to Jack, studying his face. How could the man I'd shared my life with for so long want to end our marriage so suddenly? And why now, when he was lying in a hospital bed, vulnerable and in need of support? As the hours ticked by, I sat by Jack's side, alternating between staring at his unconscious form and flipping through the divorce papers. The legal jargon swam before my eyes, but the message was clear: Jack wanted out. Nurses came and went, checking Jack's vitals and adjusting his medication. They offered me sympathetic smiles, probably assuming I was just a worried wife. If only they knew the turmoil raging inside me. As dawn broke, casting a pale light through the hospital room window, Jack began to stir. His eyes fluttered open, confusion evident as he took in his surroundings. When his gaze landed on me, I saw a flicker of something, guilt, regret, before his expression hardened. Sarah, he said, his voice hoarse, you're here. I leaned forward, taking his hand in mine. Despite everything, the instinct to comfort him was still there. Of course I'm here. Jack, you had a heart attack. I came as soon as I heard. He pulled his hand away, and the action felt like a physical blow. Did Carolyn give you the papers? He asked, not meeting my eyes. I nodded, fighting back tears. Yes, she did, Jack. I don't understand. Why now? Why like this? He sighed, finally looking at me. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know this isn't fair to you, but I've been thinking about this for a long time, and my heart attack. It made me realize life's too short to keep pretending. Pretending, I echoed, hurt and anger rising within me. Is that what our marriage has been to you? Pretend, Jack shook his head. No, not all of it. We had good times, Sarah, but we've grown apart. We want different things. I think we both know that. I wanted to argue, to fight for our marriage, but as I looked at Jack, I saw a resolve in his eyes that I'd never seen before. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. He'd been planning this, perhaps for months. Is there someone else? I asked, dreading the answer. Jack hesitated, and in that moment, I knew. It's not what you think, he said quickly. Nothing's happened, but ... yes, there is someone. Someone I've developed feelings for. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. All those late nights at the office, the sudden business trips, the emotional distance, it all made sense now. I'd been so caught up in my own life, my own career, that I'd failed to see the signs. "Who is she?" I asked, not sure if I really wanted to know. Jack looked uncomfortable. "It doesn't matter, Sarah. What matters is that I can't continue living a lie. It's not fair to you and it's not fair to me." I stood up, needing to put some distance between us. "Not fair to me? Jack, you're serving me divorce papers while lying in a hospital bed after a heart attack. How is any of this fair?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I know, I'm sorry. I didn't plan for it to happen this way. But when I felt the pain in my chest, when I thought I might die, I knew I couldn't leave things unsaid." I paced the small room, trying to wrap my head around everything. 15 years of marriage, and this was how it was ending. Not with a heartfelt conversation, not with couples therapy, but with cold, impersonal legal documents and a confession of feelings for another woman. "What about our plans?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Our dream house? The family we talked about starting?" Jack's eyes filled with tears. "Dreams change, Sarah. People change. I'm not the same man you married, and you're not the same woman. We've been going through the motions for years, following a script we wrote when we were young and naive." His words stung because there was truth in them. We had changed. Our careers had taken precedence over our relationship. Date nights had become rare, intimate conversations even rarer. But I'd always thought we'd find our way back to each other. "I never stopped loving you," I whispered, more to myself than to Jack. He reached out, taking my hand gently. "I know. And part of me will always love you, Sarah, but sometimes love isn't enough. We deserve to be happy, truly happy, both of us." I pulled my hand away, suddenly feeling suffocated in the small hospital room. "I need some air," I said, heading for the door. "Sarah," Jack called out. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "I am sorry for everything." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and left the room. I wandered the hospital corridors, my mind a whirlwind of emotions and memories. How had we gotten here? When had we stopped being partners and started being strangers living parallel lives? As I found myself in the hospital garden, I sat on a bench and finally allowed myself to cry. For the dreams that would never come true, for the future we'd planned that would never happen, for the love that had somehow slipped away without me noticing. Hours passed as I sat there, reliving our relationship in my mind. The good times, the bad times, the moments of pure joy, and the struggles we'd faced together. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, I realized something. Jack was right, we had changed, and maybe, just maybe, this ending was also a beginning. "You're right about us changing, but you're wrong about one thing: love is enough. It's enough when both people are willing to fight for it, to nurture it, to help it grow and change as they do." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "We stopped fighting for our love, Jack, both of us. We got comfortable, we got complacent, and we let our relationship wither. And that's on both of us." Jack looked like he wanted to interrupt, but I pressed on. "I'm not saying this to change your mind. I'm saying this because I need you to understand something. Our marriage may be over, but it wasn't a failure. We loved each other, we supported each other, we built a life together. And now, we're both brave enough to admit when it's time to let go." Tears were streaming down my face, but I felt stronger than I had in years. "I'm going to sign the papers, Jack. Not because I don't love you, but because I love you enough to let you go. And because I love myself enough to know I deserve someone who will fight for me, just as I'll fight for them." Jack was crying to now, a mix of emotions playing across his face. "Sarah, I don't know what to say." I smiled through my tears. "You don't have to say anything, just promise me one thing. In your new life with this new person, don't make the same mistakes we did. Don't take love for granted. Fight for it, nurture it, let it grow and change with you." He nodded, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "I promise." As I left Jack's hospital room that day, divorce papers signed and tucked into my bag, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. A chapter of my life was ending, but another was beginning. And this time, I promised myself, I would write it with intention, with passion, and with an unwavering commitment to love, both for others and for myself. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I was excited to see what it held. As I stepped out of the hospital into the warm evening air, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it head-on, with an open heart and the wisdom that only comes from loving, losing, and learning to love again.